Jadi 5 menit sebelum saya akad nikah, ini suami saya ada di sini. Saya juga mules dan harus ke toilet. Terus tadi benar-benar 5 menit sebelum ini saya juga harus kabur ke toilet, jadi sorry harus tungguin. Meskipun ternyata ada technical issue juga, jadi good everything is figured out. So first of all, very excited to be here. Thank you very much, guys, to stick around because I know after a very long day of wonderful speakers and also a whole art performance, what comes next might be a little underwhelming and might be a little boring as well. But I'll do my best to make sure that this is as useful as possible. So I'm going to talk about what we have got wrong about climate change. And instead of taking you through the story of what we got wrong and then tell you at the end, I'll actually start by saying what we got wrong about climate change, which is that, where should I point this to? Which is next. Which is the fact that we should have called it the climate crisis. It's not climate change anymore, and I'm going to tell you more about it later. But basically, first things first, it's not climate change. It's not just the climate changing, but it's a real crisis that's coming upon us, and we all should be ready for it. Before I talk about that, I'm going to ask whether any one of you notices what this picture is. What's in this picture? Chernobyl? Oh, I'm glad. Who knows that this was Chernobyl? Yeah, okay, I saw a couple hands. And I assume that you guys saw the HBO TV series Chernobyl as well, which is great. I can't recommend the show enough. But Chernobyl is a place in Russia, former USSR, and what you're looking at right now is a nuclear power plant. Salah. It's a nuclear power plant that exploded in 1986. And when it happened, when the nuclear explosion happens, you know it's gotta be bad, right? They sent an engineer, probably not from ITB, they sent, why are you guys laughing? They sent an engineer down to the core where the explosion happened, and they give him what we call as the dosimeter, which is this little thing, something like this. It's probably a little bit different, but it's a thing that measures how much radiation is you're being exposed to in a given place, basically. So when this engineer went down to the core and measured how bad the radiation was, the dosimeter, what it says over there was 3.5. So 3.5 Röntgen. I'm not an engineer, I don't know what that is, but the show told me that it's something like having 400 times of chest x-rays. So having 400 times of chest x-rays, that's the same amount of radiation that was being captured there. What the TV show later unraveled is that apparently, so 20 hours later, they realized that 3.6 was the maximum number of what the dosimeter could show. The dosimeter that they had maxed out at 3.6. So very smart scientists figured out there's got to be something wrong. We've got to send somebody in with a much greater dosimeter. You know what's the actual level of radiation at the time? Somebody who didn't see the show would like to guess? 60 apa? 60, jadi from 3.6, 60, it's 15,000. They're off by 14,996 point something, right? And the show again told me apparently that it's something equal to upon the 20 hours that they didn't do anything because they thought, oh, it was bad, but it's not that bad. 400 chest x-rays was okay. It's equal to the level of radiation of 40 Hiroshima bombs. It's 40 Hiroshima bombs. What I wanted to highlight from that story is that, so today, around 30-something years later, we know that the victims of the Chernobyl explosion of the nuclear power plant was really bad. There were 31 immediate deaths of the people who were there in the plant. But later, the death count, there are several people are debating about how many people actually died and was affected. But in general, it's a lot of people. It's many people. It's hundreds and thousands and maybe millions. What I wanted to highlight, please next, from that story is having the wrong measurement can lead you to having the wrong information and therefore the wrong course of action. Either you're not responding fast enough, you're not investing enough, or you just, you undermine the actual magnitude of the problem, right? And this was Chernobyl, and they call Chernobyl as one of the worst anthropogenic catastrophes that ever happened. I said that because I'm going to go back to that. But another example, where's the actual computer? I need to point to the computer. This is the computer? Oh, here, okay. So this is the rate of growth of Indonesia's economy since 2010, right? If you look at the trend, since 2010, which was the previous administration's time, you can say, and some people, and a lot of people like to quote this to kind of say that the economy hasn't been growing so strong, because you can compare that, oh, it was like almost 6.5% back then, we're barely 5% now, and it's bad, right? This is what people really like to say. But again, having the right measurement, actually knowing what you're looking for, matters. Because if you go back a little bit more, and this is the same data set, and you actually look at the trend from after the crisis in 1998, we've pushed our economy forward after the crisis, and we have had pretty stable growth since then, right? It gives you a completely different picture. When you look at different, you have the real magnitude, the right measuring, I guess, instrument. It gives you a very different point of view, and even more when, if you again look at the data beforehand, that dip or that kind of growth, very significant growth that we saw earlier, was just part of an ongoing trend, because countries usually have recessions, and country from time to time have crisis or experience economic crisis, right? So knowing what's ahead of you really matters. Now, where I was going with this is that, again, having the wrong measurement leads you to the wrong information and therefore the wrong or the bad decisions, right? Now, talking about bad decisions and measuring things, ever since NASA measured or recorded the level of Earth's surface temperature, there has been significant and quite robust evidence showing that there is an anomaly in the global average temperature. A lot of you are probably, were you here when you were younger? I don't know how young you guys were, but Dago Pakar used to be much colder than this. I probably would wear several more layers if this had been, some time ago. But basically, scientists, much smarter people than me, have found that there's been an almost 1 degree Celsius increase in global average temperature, right? And some people say, oh, Kafu, but the difference between 24 degrees Celsius and 25 degrees Celsius in my AC, it's not that bad, right? It's fine. I can go from, or are you guys more at around 20, or you're one of those people who thought that going to 16 degrees Celsius will make the AC works faster? It doesn't. People are thinking, oh, 1 degree is fine. But I put this picture here because if you measure your body temperature and it increases by 1 degree Celsius over 37 degrees Celsius, which is your average or normal human temperature, right? If it's got to 38 degrees Celsius, wouldn't you be worried? Wouldn't you go to the hospital, you'll start feeling nauseous, pusing, and oh, I have pain all over my body, it's really bad. 1 degree Celsius, if it's at the tip of a certain threshold, is really bad. And we have reached that level today, and things will only get worse if we do nothing. So some people think that, oh, climate change is an issue of the future. We shouldn't be thinking about it now, it's fine. By the way, this is a photo from yesterday, or kemarinnya orang Sunda, 13th of November, kemarin. This is Venice, and the city has been flooded with the highest level of tide since in 50 years. Basically, climate change or the climate crisis is happening and is already affecting us. But then some of you would say, oh, but that's in Venice, it's fine, itu isunya orang bule, orang Indonesia nggak usah peduli, nggak apa-apa. Hello again. I hate this thing. Hello again. This is this year. Farmers in a lot of villages across Indonesia have been experiencing one of the longest longer dry season. They usually already start planting something in October. If you remember waktu SD, we remember musim hujan to be Bahu Omar or something like this. Do you remember this? Mason Barat, musim hujan, Oktober Maret, right? Bahu Omar. So this is happening right here, right in front of us. And sometimes the people who are affected the most are people who are marginalized, who can't move from their initial house, who are trapped in where they are and kind of have very limited economic instruments to make livelihood out of. So, and it will only get worse if you do nothing. Basically, what's ahead of us is much worse water crisis. People will wage wars upon having access to water. Some people will have their houses permanently flooded. There's also food crisis. Our agricultural production has already been affected by the climate crisis today. And it will start the chain of what Greta Thunberg, whom Sarah put on her slide earlier, the rebellion leader of this issue, that will lead a chain of mass extinction. And this is really bad, guys. It's bad. I promise you it's bad. It's like bad looking at, again, like, oh, this is 3.6 Röntgen, it's fine, when in reality it's really 15,000 Röntgen, and we should all be worried about this. So let me explain you a little bit why is the climate changing and why has we been experiencing these things. Basically, what happened, the scientists, again, the smart people, call this as the greenhouse gas effect. And this is what my what amateur language would call as how carbon dioxide and a lot of greenhouse gas emissions basically thickens the atmosphere in a way that traps heat to get out of Earth, basically Earth's surface. So what usually gets released and therefore kind of manage a stable level of global temperature is now trapped inside the Earth. And what are there good ways of talking about it other than, have you parked a car with no shade on it and left it a couple of hours, and after that when you enter, it's actually lebih panas di dalam daripada di luar. Right? Have you experienced that? Yes, that's exactly what's happening. So the same way that heat was trapped inside your car if it's being parked under sunlight is how the Earth is kind of dealing with right now. So the Earth is sick, it's having fever, and we all need to act on it. And the way that the scientist community has tried to solve this is they set what's called as the global carbon budget. So they budgeted, okay, if you want to limit the global warming to this degree where we're still likely to survive, we can only release at maximum around 3 trillion, there's a specific measurement to it, but I'm not smart enough to know that. But what I do know is that we've used almost 2/3 of it. So we've used most of it, and as I told you before, we're already at like 1 degree Celsius of warming. So we need to really slow down and think about what we want to do with the rest of our budget. So now let's go look at Indonesia and think about where does Indonesia's emissions actually come from. So where does this greenhouse gas that traps heat on Earth come from in Indonesia? They come from, 92% of them comes from deforestation and agricultural activities. In 2019, you're all very familiar with this. Forest and peat fires actually release a lot of carbon emissions, much more, a lot thicker than deforestation actually, because peat is a very rich carbon stock. It's also the fact that our energy is still coal powered and a lot of other fossil fuel powered, and transportation. So transportation also uses fossil fuel again. So a majority of Indonesian sources of GHG emissions come from this. More than half actually comes from this. Around 30% comes from this. Why is this the case? Because some people think, and again this goes back to having the right dosimeter, some people think that the business as usual is the cheapest way to go. They think it's cheap. As long as it's cheap and it's for the people, palm oil is for the people, it's fine. We're gonna continue using it, we're gonna continue burn the lands, the forest, because it's the cheapest way to clear lands, apparently. And I can talk more about it later, but some people think it's business as usual is the cheapest way to go. They say, oh, look at how much palm oil we export to the world. Look at this hundreds of trillions of rupiah, coming into, actually it's coming in maybe in dollars, but equivalent to this number of palm oil exports. Meanwhile, even the largest fires that happened in 2015 only costed the government around 2.8 trillion. It's a lot of money, but it's still much, cheaper than how much palm oil we're actually exporting, right? Right? Yeah. Are we using the right dosimeter? We'll find out. The World Bank did an estimation of how much it actually costed the people who live around the forest that's being burned, the people who had to go to the hospital and have acute respiratory diseases. I don't know the technical terms for it. And then the airports that needs to be shut down, the transportation issue, all these costs that the government is not paying for, by the way, and the palm oil companies are not paying for either, are being borne by, again, sometimes the most poor people in these areas. People who are dependent on natural resources and are being affected by these externalities, basically. And this number, you might say, oh, but we still get a difference of 18 or something, and that's worth it. But that doesn't include the long-term effects on human capital. So we haven't thought about what, in terms of acute respiratory health disease, for example, what's going to happen after 20 years. We don't know how much further costs that would be have to be borne. These are just immediate costs. And then they also say, oh, but coal is cheap. This is coal. I'm comparing coal to hydro, geothermal, solar, wind, and gas. Coal is cheap, they say. Again, wrong decimeter, because coal is cheap because you don't include the cost of air pollution. You don't include the cost of air pollution. You don't include the fact that the government is subsidizing it, and that's why it's cheap. Coal is being subsidized, guys, and we haven't included the carbon dioxide emissions. So again, the emissions of the climate crisis. If we actually added them all up, coal is very expensive. It's just that the people who are bearing these costs are not the same people who are benefiting from selling coal to the power plants. Again, having the wrong measurement leads to having the wrong information and leads to the bad decision. I can't emphasize this enough. So, final question is, and I just want to say that switching to green growth is not just the right thing. It's not just a tree hugger thing. Everyone is like, oh, that's a tree hugger issue, it's not my issue. But it's actually good for the economy. It's actually, we've just been overlooking some of these costs that are actually being borne by someone else. Think about the health costs. And now that there's BPJS, it will actually affect the government spending as well, because the government has to pay for the health insurance, right? And I'll close with this, which is what we can do, okay? Everyone is like, well, I'm angry, I'm gonna do something about climate change, what should I do? And that's the hardest part, because to be honest, the people who are in power are the ones who can make a change at this scale. Again, this is a crisis. If you have a war, you don't expect the civilians to deal with it. It's a big crisis, and it takes robust policy reforms and robust investment, a lot of investment in the right things, in the right power plants. But what we can do, at least, and this is Greta Thunberg's answer that I also really like, one is educate yourself on this issue. Try to learn more, read more books, listen to podcasts. Don't just trust everything that I said here, because I might be wrong. Don't just trust the campaign, the activist groups who have agenda, because sometimes they also, are not looking at the issue as a whole issue. Sometimes they are like all about this one idealistic solution that doesn't actually exist, because you do have to compromise. So educate yourself and spread the awareness wisely. It's really important, because at the end of the day, we can, once a lot more people are aware of this issue, we can elect public office holders who actually run on this platform, who care about this issue, and we'll try to push for the right policy reforms. And we need to, once they are elected, we need to continue make them accountable. Be angry when they take the wrong decisions. Question why is the growth of coal power plants in Indonesia in the past 5 years is 4.5 times higher than renewable energy growth. Do you know that? Anyway, and when you do choose sustainable products, do it smartly. Don't just, you have like 10 sedotan metal, ya kan? Terus tas ininya kalau orang Bandung gaul banget, punyanya banyak juga. All of those are emissions, guys. Just have one. Just have one. That's the way to go. Just have one and use it for 10 years. Dan kalau bisa, next TEDx, don't give out the goodie bags. I think you can reduce a lot of emissions from there. Sorry, it's great, guys. It's just future ideas, right? So that's all from me. Thank you so much for listening, and have a good day.